Good.
All right.
While we're waiting, Danny, why don't you just kind of give a brief background of who you are, what you do, and whatnot.
Yeah, totally. So my name's Danny Moeller. I'm a physical therapist and strength and conditioning coach in South Jersey. So I've had the pleasure of working as a physical therapist for the last 3 years of my career. I went to Stockton University for my undergraduate, and I was lucky enough to play 4 years of basketball there at the Division III level. Met a lot of great people, trained very hard, and learned what it took to actually perform at a high level in that end. And then I moved on to study to achieve my doctorate of physical therapy at Thomas Jefferson University in Center City, Philadelphia. Graduated in 2023, and now I look to rehab athletes back from injury and actually stay with some for a more longer term.
Awesome. Sounds good. It's a good journey so far.
Yeah.
So getting into it, talking about rehab, so the role of a PT and that relationship with strength and conditioning, so a strength coach like me. So the first question, Danny, should injured athletes work out?
Great question. When you sent this to me, I took a couple of different viewpoints from this, but at the end of the day, the answer is a resounding yes for all situations. And I think when you dive into that question of should an athlete work out or continue to train while they're injured, we need to first define what the injury is, or if it is a pain response, that's something that we need to look into a little bit more efficiently as a staff. And so when I look at that situation for an athlete that needs to continue to train while they're injured, I look at what my role is who's the athlete in front of me and what's my role in their process. So like if I play this physical therapy role, I need to do certain things. And then if I have a strength coach on staff or who I can send them to, we collaborate together to ensure that they're getting back to peak performance. And so Liam, when you ask this question, should they continue to train? I take everything, and I talk about this a lot with my athletes. I take everything as a cup analogy.
Right.
So I'm gonna set this up real quick and see if you guys can see this as well.
Yeah, that should be about good there, I think.
All right, perfect. So, all right, let's take a cup. Okay. So you as a person, this is you. This is your capacity. The cup is capacity to
And
do
to
the
clarify,
thing.
Danny, yeah, capacity for what?
Yeah, capacity to do the thing that you want to do, whether that be your sport, your activity of interest. Capacity is this cup. Now, when we take the thing that you want to do, let's say it's the sport, let's say it's an activity, it's a goal that you have, right? That comes with a cost. And so when we take the thing, the sport, that involves stress to the body. Well, let's take water, for example. When I start filling the cup, it gets to a certain point where we're getting close to the edge. We're getting close to our capacity, our current level, what we can pretty much take on in the sport.
Yeah.
Now, with this cup, right, the water can represent stress, physical stress, emotional, mental, psychological. At the end of the day, athletes, when they get to this certain area where the cup starts to overflow, that is injury,
Right.
or that's pain, or that's a moment where the tissue itself, the capacity for that tissue to handle stress becomes overflowed.
Right.
Now, we'll go through three situations when this starts to overflow. What do we do when an athlete's injured, or what do we do when they're in pain? Let's go through three situations. First situation here is a lot of parents or a lot of coaches, what they'll tell us is they'll say, all right, well, the cup's overflowing, so why don't we just take the stress away? Why don't we just rest?
Yeah.
Why don't we just do
That's what you hear most commonly, take a week off and see how it is.
Yeah, right. Which is understandable. Now, what happens is, great, we've taken stress away, and now we presumably have, we have enough to maybe go back to do that thing. So let's say I rest for a certain amount of time, and pain is down. I go back to walking, great. But let's say I go back to the sport, and that just happens again. Because the original issue is we didn't address the cup.
Right.
We didn't address your capacity, your physical capacity to handle the stress that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's situation number one. And I look at that as a really big problem for athletes returning from injury is that we just say, let's take the stress away, and then let's assume that you can go back to the same level you were at before.
Yeah.
That's situation number one.
Right.
Number two, and the end all be all goal with training, particularly strength and conditioning, is that you go from this cup to this one.
Right.
So having more capacity to do the thing.
Yeah.
And this is ultimately an end goal with any athlete that I have, is that let's make sure that you have a bigger cup to withstand the demands you have to do, right?
Yep.
Now here's a situation number two. It's, all right, Danny, we've gotten a bigger cup. We have more capacity now to do the thing. So we could assume that everyone's not going to get injured now.
Yeah.
Great. Here's the second situation. I take a bigger cup, and let's say I start adding more stress. We play more. We're more active. What happens is I just have one cup that filled. Now that I have a bigger cup, and I'm not addressing the things that are going into the cup, the stressors, the bigger cup still overflows.
Yeah.
So I think the second situation is when we have a bigger cup, we need to also address the other factors that could be filling this cup up other than just the physical stressors.
Right.
So this is when we talk about allostatic load with Tim Gabbett. And what allostatic load is essentially the other external factors playing a role in your performance.
Yep.
So if we are not addressing those other external factors, we could be having a bigger cup, but the issue is probably not capacity. It's the other things that are going into the cup.
Yeah. What would be some examples of those, Danny?
Yeah, great question. So other factors that could be filling this cup up, not only physical, is emotional, cognitive stress, academic stress. So we see with some research, and shout out to Steve Grazioli, who you'll have as a future guest, taught me a lot about this component with allostatic load, is that academic stress could actually play a huge role in an in-season athlete. So if you're not addressing the other factors at play that could be impacting their performance, that's situation number two, ultimately.
Right. Yeah.
And so situation three, and I think this is the ultimate goal with any rehab process and strength conditioning process, that now we have a bigger cup to withstand the loads that are applied to us.
Yeah.
And we also know, as a health and performance staff, what's going in to that cup, and we have ways to monitor that, and we understand what's going in there for that individual that's in front of us.
Right. Yeah.
So I think the end all goal is to ultimately have a bigger cup with all your athletes and understand what factors could else be playing a role leading to their performance.
Yeah, kind of managing what goes in there as well, but more of a load management side to it as well.
Correct.
Yeah, for sure. No, I like that. And to touch a little bit about kind of a tissue specific capacity and a global kind of specific capacity.
Yeah, we look at this from local tissue capacity and global tissue capacity is an idea proposed by Tim Gabbett, and I like it a lot from a standpoint of what are we going to focus on for the athlete that's in front of us. And so I think that situation, we go back to like the first cup where we have low capacity to meet the demands of sport, let's say, right? And when this starts to overflow, this cup, I think what happens is in rehab, we focus too much sometimes on the local tissue itself and not focus on what other areas of the body we could still uplift and prioritize and optimize.
Yeah.
So as if we just focus on the local, we might, and it's hard to fill this back up, but
to clarify local,
go ahead.
Like imagine as an example, let's say an athlete has a strained quad, for example. The local would be the strained quad, and the global would be tissues surrounding that, and the body as a system as a whole.
Absolutely. And from that standpoint, is if we focus too much on the local stuff and we return them back to sport, we might have focused on the injured area. We might have gotten it back to health, but if we didn't train other things around that area, that could be leading to issues when they go back, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I like that a lot.
Yeah, if you want to move on to my next question for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Is what do you think as a physical therapist, what do you think we should understand before sending an athlete to you from a rehab to a strength and conditioning
Yeah,
perspective.
I think that's a great point. Oftentimes it's very easy for there to be a disconnect between the two services as such. Whereas I think PT gets a rep for, in some ways, being laid back, work on that one specific thing, and then you're good. But the challenge that we're talking about here is bridging the gap and maintaining high performance throughout injury. So when you touch on the global tissue capacity and the local tissue capacity, I think maintaining the ability to operate and withstand the stress of sport whilst injured is going to be key. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say, for example, there is an injury and you're targeting the local tissues and rehabbing that specifically. Adding in an element of a full body movement here or there, incorporating it in a different way, different movement, different stress, different load, that's going to be key before getting back to me. And so in your role, Danny, I think it's important for you to know, for the sport that an athlete plays, what stresses are they exposed to? And then what do they need to get back to? Now, early stage rehab, their overall physical capacity is most likely limited. But I think that goal is going to be to maintain that capacity in the early stage as high as possible, so that when they do get back to me, that gap is smaller compared
Yeah,
to their capacity has been limited here. They've only been working local capacities down here now. Keeping that overall global capacity high is going to help them when they get back into strength training. So I
yeah,
think having an idea of what global capacity looks like and the stresses of their sport is going to be key to keep them in kind of the best shape possible whilst being injured. So, like
right.
a loose example, let's say a soccer player has a shoulder injury. They might be able to still do some ball work, but let's say from a conditioning standpoint, they may not be able to run just because of the impact from the landing. But bike, why not get them on a bike? Simple as that. It's a short element of conditioning, very simple.
Hmm.
That's more just kind of a cardio element from
Right.
fitness, but you can do it from a strength standpoint as well. You know,
Yeah, you're
so many
talking
ways to go about that.
absolutely. You're kind of hinting at a floor and a ceiling,
Right?
right?
Yeah.
So every athlete has a floor. That's kind of what they currently can do, and the ceiling is pretty much all right. What's peak performance? What's peak me look like?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about is when we continue to train, even while we're injured, is that we're still trying to maintain that same level, because
Exactly.
any injury, any pain mechanism, a surgery particularly, will take our floor and bring us kind of to the basement. So
Right. Yeah.
if what we're doing with chronic training load and building that over time is that we're eliminating this large gap, that
Exactly.
if we go through an injury or surgery, hey, if we were training for a while, that drop off isn't that steep
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
compared to if we just rest and we just deload, that becomes an issue as well.
Right. And I think
So
it's an expectation to not expect that ceiling to get higher when injured. I would say that's more of an unrealistic thought, but
mhm,
maintaining where the floor is and not letting that drop, that's going to have a massive benefit when returning to the later stage of rehab,
yeah, for
for
sure. And
sure.
that gets to my next question. With so I've been seeing a lot online this whole sports specific
Yeah.
activity or sports specific drills in a, let's say, a rehab setting or a strength conditioning, a weight room setting. Now, what is your thought on sports specific activities versus, let's say, stimulus specific activities in the weight room,
Yeah.
and where do they fit in terms of you?
Right. No, yeah, great question. And so to clarify the 2 points, so stimulus specific, let's say, let's use speed, the kind of genre of speed training for this example. So when you sprint, if you're working true speed, you need appropriate work to rest ratios in order to target the energy systems that you want that are going to help improve speed. If you kind of change that perspective to more of a sport stimulus, you're, in some ways, you're taking away that specific kind of energy system target that you are targeting. And I lean more towards the kind of tissue specific stimulus, because I think you're going to get more bang for your buck when you're working a tissue specific stimulus. That translates to multiple different movements, multiple different positions. Let's say I'm doing a movement run, I'm incorporating a ball. I'm only going to get better in that one thing for the most part. And so let's say when we look at change of direction, you need the capacity to rapidly decelerate in order to then re-accelerate in the desired direction. The tissue specific capacity is an adequate amount of kind of eccentric strength to be able to decelerate, and then an adequate amount of concentric strength to explode into the new direction that you want. If I'm doing a soccer drill, for example, I might be able to say, play ball there, and then go through it. Yeah, you might still be going through the same pattern, but the intent is different, and the intent is the goal. So if you can prioritize a drill with the intent of targeting a tissue-specific stimulus, in my opinion, you're going to get a better response from that, kind of a response to that load, that stress, which is going to help in multiple different positions, multiple different movements. I think it's more of a broad response than kind of one lane in that kind of
Right.
sport-specific movement you're getting.
Absolutely. I see a lot of change of direction, based drills where it could be very pre-planned, and there's times and places for pre-planned versus unplanned, and for reactive and unreactive, depending on the complexity that you want to do. And I think we get lost in this as, let's try to mimic the sport instead of let's try to mimic the demands.
The actual position they're hitting. Yeah.
And I think that's where we can spend more time on it and make it more valuable to the athlete in front of us.
For sure. Yeah. One part you touched on there, when I look at athletes when they come in, from a coach's eye, I can see how some athletes move compared to other athletes. Let's say, for example, we've got an athlete who's very hip dominant in terms of how they load, or very knee dominant. A knee dominant athlete is going to be able to, typically from what I see, be able to change direction more efficiently because they have the strength to go through the range of motion that position requires. If they don't have the capacity to load their quad, bend their knee, get into a deep position, they're going to struggle getting out of it as well. Mm-hmm. And so there are times where I will put them through a drill where it's exposing them to that challenge, and they may not be the best at it right away, but they need to build familiarity with the position that we're trying to achieve. But then also working on the really specific position of that drill as well. And the way that then this first one, the putting them through the drill, the way to make that most effective is by kind of coaching the technique and then executing it with competition. Because otherwise you're just going through the motion. So you need an athlete to understand what you're wanting from them, but then also putting them in an environment where they're going to work hard to get that outcome. And it may not always look perfect. It may not be perfect.
Yeah.
But if intent is there, that's the goal. The intent is the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably the most powerful term is intent.
Yeah.
It's like, what do I want out of this? When I before I do anything, I always ask myself, what do I want out of this for them?
Yeah.
And if I can tell that the intent isn't there, I may need to back off, or I may need to not make it too complex, maybe simplify it in some way, or understand how energy plays a role. We talked about those other external factors in the beginning. If we're not addressing energy, and we're not addressing those things that could be leading a role into energy depletion, then we're not going to get what we want out of the tasks, out of the things that we want to do in the weight room.
Yeah, definitely. So, no, I like that. Moving on to our next question for you, Danny. So how do you go about structuring a rehab plan?
Yeah, I think for the rehab plan, I'm going to answer this. And I know we have an additional question when it comes to like, when do we know an athlete's ready to return to strength and conditioning?
Yeah, that can be part two as such.
Yeah, that can be part two. For part one, developing this rehab plan, I think always starts with the end in mind. Right. So I call this reverse engineering, where we take the demands of the sport or the activity. We always look at that. All right, hey, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And we're going to start with that. And then we're gonna drop down to, all right, well, what qualities do you need for that thing?
Yep.
Do you need sprint speed? Do you need acceleration? Do you need change of direction? Do you need deceleration capacity?
Yeah.
What is it that you need specifically for the thing that you have to do?
Yeah.
Right. So now we have demands up top. We have the end in mind. We have the qualities that are needed to achieve that thing. And then the last bit, the most important, is, all right, well, who's in front of me? What do they have? And what do we have to pretty much profile for them in terms of, and I like to label some things with some people as like, all right, you have superpowers and kryptonites. Are you really good at this thing? So maybe you don't need to address that. And maybe these kryptonites are what's stopping you from being peak you. So I like to work backwards. Yeah. And I think having the end in mind with a rehab process is so crucial. It's an idea called forward thinking, where when we look forward constantly and we are what we're doing in the present moment pertains to what we have to do in the future. I think that is a nice way to keep them in the loop, and not deviate too far from the path, or if they feel like they wonder, well, why are we doing this thing? Because it's not helping me in the moment. It's like, well, let's look forward. Let's think about what we have to do. We have the map. We have the end in mind. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And so that's how, from a rehab standpoint, that's how in a structure format, that's how I'm taking things. Yeah. And then part two to that is like, all right, well, what I look for in a rehab setting for an athlete. And I have a couple of non-negotiables, really. And I think the number one thing is, when you come in with pain or you have something that's bothering you, is that we have to figure out what the problem is. Right. Day one. And because ultimately, if we know the problem, the solutions can be right in front of us. We can find the solutions pretty, not to say easily, but we know the problem, the solutions are going to follow. So we have to understand the problem. And I think for a lot of people that come to me, sometimes they're confused, or pain is very unpredictable and it's hard to control. And I think that's a major issue that we want to really hit home first, is let's make your pain manageable. Let's make it predictable, and let's have solutions in mind that are gonna pretty much address those things that you're coming in with. Yeah. So I think that's priority number one, is that pain is manageable, it's predictable, and it's understood. That's priority number one. We found solutions. And from a kind of number two, or my second, is, well, if we know the injured tissue, and we know, based on, let's say, biological timelines from healing, from a muscle, a tendon, a bone, or a joint injury, if we can understand what the injured tissue is, we can understand how to load it. Right. And there's certain areas of the body that require, certain tissues that require maybe a little bit more specific stimulus to actually get pain down.
What would be an example of that?
I think so I work with a lot of basketball players, and a lot of tendon injuries, right? We're relying on that fast stretch shortening cycle. We're relying on tendon function, and that can develop into some pain, because we're doing some pretty extraordinary things with our body. And so for a tendon perspective, what I tell people is, how we're going to get the tendon feeling better is we're going to load it heavily enough, and we're going to be smart about how many times we're going to load it throughout the week, just based on the response factors that we know. But from a tendon's perspective, we know we have to load to get better. And there's some periods of time where pain is going to be there. And I think it's important for them to understand, hey, it's okay, from a acceptable threshold of how we can load this thing to actually make it feel better. Yeah. That's one. Now let's say for what we know from a muscle injury, is that if we can slowly and gradually apply stress to it, it's going to get better. But we can't piss it off too early. Right. Via a stretch, or via a high rapid stretch shortening movement. We need to understand how to load that tissue appropriately. What joint angles do I need to achieve? How can I constrain the environment to make sure that they don't shield away from it? Because I see a lot of athletes, the human body is very robust and adaptable. I call it stress shielding. We're going to shield away from the injured thing. Yep. And you'll see that a lot of people will deviate from a certain side, or they won't want to bend the knee so much because it hurts. And I get it. Right. It's can we figure out a way to find our entry points and to load that tissue enough to, again, build the capacity for that just alone. Yeah. And while we're keeping the global stuff in mind. So I think if from a rehab perspective, if we can think about local first, have global in mind, And then we have to understand, okay, how much can that tissue take? Because there's only so much. I can't do an hour's worth
Yeah.
of strength training. I need to pick my period of time to address the injured tissue.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and to help that person.
one point to add
Yeah.
on that is when you're looking at the local tissue, one perspective that I have on that is if you're doing too much, it's like you're almost picking at a scab. If you
Right.
pick it too much, you're back to
Right.
square one almost. So
Yeah.
you've got to really be strategic in how you dose that load, so that it's healing, but it's not too much to reset it back to square one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've lost my train of thought for a second. But go back to what you were saying more.
So you were talking about a little bit about kind of that overall load in terms of how much within a week are you hitting locally, and how's that impacting what you do globally, and that
Yeah.
relationship between the two. And where were we?
Yeah, but that goes into when you have somebody in front of you, and if you understand the tissue involved, and I believe that, and when you ask this, we can go to this part two, is like, all right, well, when as a physical therapist, when do I know I can send them to the strength coach or to the trainer that they have?
Yeah.
I think if we have that good flow of communication, I
100%.
like my athletes, I like my patients to get with their trainers, their strength coaches ASAP.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be too far away from the thing that was actually going to get them better over time.
Right.
It's can I help strategically place different exercises or maybe different viewpoints that strength coach can take with them and say, okay, well,
Yeah.
let's utilize these things, and then we'll focus on the other areas that we still need to develop. I think that's very powerful, is that people don't get away from training. And if we can keep them in the environment that was helping them,
yeah,
I think that's the end goal for anybody.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of points on that to touch on there, because that's super important, and maintaining that relationship between, or the understanding of the relationship between rehab, that rehab process, and the regular strength and conditioning process is how can the two be combined. And from my role as a coach, one way I'll go about that is if I have an athlete coming to me who has an injury, option one is, okay, depending on the timeline, maybe it's my responsibility to completely avoid that, and we just work globally, avoiding that one area. Or depending on their stage, maybe it's a case of, after communication with the physical therapist, I would have a deeper knowledge of where they're at in terms of their timeline, how much stress they can tolerate. And maybe it's a case of, all right, maybe in a warm-up, we want to feel the most important bucket first. So maybe in the warm-up, I might add a few movements to target the injured tissue, and then from there we go global. Right. And then that consistent communication between PT, strength coach, eventually the difference in service of working the injured tissue to the kind of what I do as a strength coach working more global, those two can get more in line, and then it just becomes one in late stage rehab.
Right.
And that the communication is the key, but it's also important for the injured athlete to understand that relationship as well. And they've got to be willing to put in the work for that. It can't be a case of just showing up and I'm going to PT. That means it's going to take care of itself. It's just showing up isn't going to do it. But being kind of having the desire to want to heal, to want to get better, that's the one big step of getting to that end stage sooner, I would say. Yeah, no, for sure. I'm really happy with where we got to there. Any other points bouncing off of those ones? Those points?
Bouncing off those, no. I think we covered a good amount, and I think we go back to communication. I think whoever ends up watching this, whether you're a strength coach, a rehab coach, a trainer, parent, coach, I believe that everything that I look at is like kind of a triangle, if you will, where the athlete is in the very center of that triangle.
Yep.
And we have these strategic points, or these people along the team that are supporting that athlete to stay where they are, for peak performance. You pretty much have the coach up top who sometimes runs the show. Like, he has a lot of decisions, and he pretty much will make decisions based on where that athlete's at. But I think those other people, medical staff in one corner and performance staff on the other, when you have that good relationship between all three, and you'll see this in a high performance setting, there's reasons why a high performance setting has these, is because these people are all parts of the team. No one person is going to be the end like dictator. It's a community. It's collaboration. And if we keep the athlete, the person in the center, in mind, it doesn't matter what my viewpoint is versus yours and what the coaches is. If we can come together and speak the same language and have the person in the center in mind, we're going to succeed as a team. That's ultimately what you want for the athlete.
For sure. No, I like that. I think that's a good point to kind of to close it up there.
For sure.
Awesome. I appreciate your time, Danny, and thank you for everyone who kind of tuned in and listened to this. And there'll be more snippets to come from this, and another call in the future.
Liam, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to more guests that you have on here. I'm glad to just get this started.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Danny. Catch you later. See ya.